My name is Jason Nothdurft, and you're listening to Chasing Dreams with Amy J.
Welcome to Chasing Dreams podcast with Amy J. Amy believes that realizing a life without regrets is achieved by taking chances, chasing your dreams, making moves, and overcoming your doubts. The Chasing Dreams podcast will help you overcome life's obstacles, believe in your potential, and inspire you to face your fears. And now here's the woman who is passionately pursuing her dreams, Amy J.
Hey Dream Chasers, this is Amy J, and thank you so much for tuning into episode 177 of Chasing Dreams. First, guys, a word from our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by our Patreon campaign supporters. Thanks to all of you for your support. Beginning January 2019, as a thank you, Patreon supporters will have exclusive initial access to a bonus video conversation with our guests. Even donating $1 an episode goes a long way. For more information on our Patreon campaign or if you'd like to donate to help keep the show going, please visit amyj21.com/Patreon. Guys, I want you to meet a friend of mine. He is a true superhero and the definition of not all superheroes wear capes. He is Jason Nothdurft. He is a married 32-year-old police dispatcher with a 2-year-old puppy and is expecting his first child in April. He donated his kidney in 2014 and has dedicated as much of his free time as possible to advocating on behalf of kidney patients and organ donors. Not all superheroes wear capes. It's an amazing thing that he has done. And I am so proud and happy and stoked to be able to share this conversation with you guys about his journey to being a living organ donor and why it's such an important cause today. So just check it out. Hey, Jason, welcome to the show.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for having me.
It's about time. We've been talking about this. Life has gotten in the way so many times, but it's 2019. I just feel like new things are happening now, and that is why you're here today.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot going on in my life between career changes, life changes. My dreams have changed and molded and formulated, and I'm very excited to be here to be able to discuss everything and share my story with everybody.
So, interestingly enough, you are a dispatcher. And so when you were young, is that something you saw your life going towards?
Absolutely not. This is not a career path that ever really formulated in my thoughts growing up. Growing up, at one point I wanted to be a computer scientist, and then I wanted to get involved in government and politics, and that formulated into working for the government in civil service job as a police dispatcher for my county.
Wow. But that's also, interestingly enough, as you were going through those options, those choices, trying to figure it out, here you are now, dispatcher. Are you happy with where you're at?
I'm very happy. So just a little bit more background. When I was going through college, I had to pay my own way. And my dad was actually working at the same place I was, performing a different function. And when I ran out of money for college, I applied and they hired me. And 11 years later, here I am with a great career and what looks like a great path forward. And there's only room for me to grow.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the reason I ask is sometimes people hear of atypical jobs like yours and think people aren't necessarily satisfied with that they just settled on it. And I wanted to dissuade some people and say, hey, you've chosen this profession. This is something that you want to do. People don't always realize that because it's not something they'd necessarily pick. Do you find that to be the case?
So a lot of what happens growing up, when you ask a child, an infant, or even a little bit older, school age, a lot of the common career paths that they want to pursue are, I want to grow up and be a firefighter. I want to grow up, I want to be a police officer. Usually in those situations, they have a family member who was a police officer, who was a firefighter, who was an EMT. And dispatching is not as glorious of a job, but they are ultimately the first responders, because without us receiving those calls for help, the people who were providing the help firsthand wouldn't know where to go or what to do.
You actually make a very good point. The dispatch is the first point of contact, isn't it? When asking or requesting for help. I gotta admit, I think I would be intimidated by that job, scared that, I wouldn't respond fast enough or just not do something right. Did you ever have those fears or qualms as you were taking this job?
So when I was in my training process, I was doing pretty well. Mm-hmm. And then it came time to learning how to answer the phones. And I was deathly afraid of answering the phones. Okay. And I don't know what exactly got me over it, but I can say this as a matter of fact. Mm-hmm. At all levels of my job, I didn't learn anything without making a mistake first. So I make a mistake. I understand my mistake. I learn how not to make my mistake again, and I try to move forward. There's nothing wrong with making mistakes as long as you're, and I tell this to new people today who get hired, there's nothing wrong with making mistakes as long as nobody has died. As long as nobody, there's no serious repercussions to what you've done, there's always room to learn. And the moment you stop learning is the moment that you really should find a new job. But at the same time, if you can't figure out how to not necessarily fix your mistakes, but learn from your mistakes, you are going to just be in a standstill. And you're not going to learn much of anything.
We were talking earlier offline about a new philosophy of sorts that you're kind of embracing this year about saying yes and saying no and which one you should do. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I when you said it, I was like, amazing things could happen with that.
Over the last few years, especially professionally, I've said yes to a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. And it felt very gratifying to know that people were depending on me to get certain things done in a certain fashion, in a certain manner. But over time, especially more recently, as I've had consistent large amounts of time off from work, I've realized that it's impossible for me to do everything as well as I would like to do it. Mm. So I had to have the conversation with myself first to say, if I want to be good at something, I can't be pulled in different directions. I can't focus on 5 different things when I really need to be focusing on 1 or 2 different things. So when you can't, not that I couldn't handle doing all of those things very well, but you can't do them the best. And I've really just wanted to reduce the amount of stress level that I had and not have to worry about all the different things that I was expected to do. So I had a tough conversation with myself, had a tough conversation with my boss, and I said, listen, if you want me to help this organization grow better, I need to be able to focus on one thing at a time. And I really want to be the best at that. And I think that if I can focus on these 1 or 2 things, then I can really help this organization grow and move forward.
If you're listening to the audio of this, you can't see me nodding my head and just like, yes. And the reason I do that is it's a very brave thing that you did. One, to realize and recognize and have that conversation with yourself. Not easy at all, right? And then to take that conversation and what you've bravely decided to your boss and said, hey, I need to cut back. I need to scale back, not just for the business, but for myself. That's a very selfless, and some people, well, it's a selfish, but also a selfless because you wanted to do better for those around you. And you don't always see it that way.
Right. So a big issue in public safety, whether it's dispatch, whether it's actual responders, police, fire, EMS, is mental health. Mm. And it's a topic that's not discussed in the open. Nobody wants to admit that they're the weak person, or they don't want to be perceived as the weakest link. So they keep it all bottled up, and it's not good. So there's a lot of things that can go into improving that, whether it's removing the stigma of discussing mental health to making sure resources are available to everybody. So if they need someone to talk to, I know our employer has an employee assistance program that provides counseling opportunities. Things could always be better, but in the meantime, we have to work within our means. And some of that is being able to say no and knowing what our limits are and our abilities are and where we think our focuses should be.
I love that, though, because You've made that decision. We're still in January, and having that insight early on is a great sign of what the year can bring if you're already being honest with yourself about where you're at and what you can and cannot do. Because it's very hard to do that with yourself.
Right. And the other thing is, as well, is I'm expecting my first child in the middle of April. So it's to the point as well where I need to focus on my family. As you've experienced trying to book this interview with me over the last couple of years, life happens very quickly. And with the nature of the business that I'm in, I work so many hours of overtime, or I'm getting my schedule changed to do training, or I've got doctor's appointments or chiropractors, and, or I've got to be with the wife for her doctor's appointments. And if I'm going to have a good home life, like, there's no sense of me bringing a child into this world if I can't provide some sort of normalcy.
Yeah.
And for me to be committed to my career, to be committed to my family, there has to be a better balance than what I've been doing over the past 11 years.
And I think the other key to that, though, is, aside from you making the decision, is accepting it. Did you struggle with that, accepting that you'd have to make this decision and what it would mean?
I did, and it was very much so a struggle, because you don't ever want to admit that you aren't strong enough or you aren't capable enough to do everything. Mm-hmm. But the important part is that you just have to be honest, and it's so hard. It very much is hard, and it's.
I feel like we're harder on ourselves. If you told the same story to somebody else, or if somebody else came to you with that same scenario, hey, I'm spread thin at work, I have all this stuff going on, I have a baby coming, you would probably, at least I know I would be like, you need to cut back.
Right. And I think everyone has pretty much understood. And we have a fairly large department. So I'm hoping that whatever void I may or may not have left by pulling some of my back from some of my responsibilities, that other people get the opportunity to fill in.
That is a great point.
It's not all about me. Like, it's really not about me. I could care less about my career path at this point. I mean, I wanted to go forward and move on, but at the same time, for the betterment of the organization, there's other points of views out there that probably aren't being heard. And that could be for a couple of reasons. It could be that the bosses don't want to hear those opinions. It could be that these people don't have the courage to voice their opinion. So it could be a combination of both. I mean, it's tough to really say for sure. At
the same time, I think, you make a great point. Instead of trudging along, suffering, why not give someone else a chance?
Right.
That's essentially what you're doing.
It comes at no financial cost to me.
Yeah.
It's a little weird when people still approach me as if I still had some of those responsibilities, but it's hey, can you look at the schedule for this? And I said, well, I don't have that anymore. I gave that up. And, it's a struggle for me, because I enjoyed having access to certain things that I had with those responsibilities. And now I have to give it up, and I'm such a control freak at the same time. But I know that for the betterment of the organization, I need to trust that the other people in leadership positions, or the other people filling in the roles that I was completing, I have to trust that they can do their job.
You've always been a helper, it seems. And I don't want to say recently, because now we're at 4 years. You did something so selfless in 2014 that it's apparent that you're still being helpful, right? But let's talk about what you did in 2014. I gave a small glimpse, teaser, if you will, to the audience, but why don't you describe a little bit of what happened then?
So on January 14th, 2014, which I believe it was the 5th anniversary, was just yesterday, I donated my kidney to the stepfather of one of my best friends. Today, we are great friends, and every year we get together. In fact, we're getting together in a couple of days to go out to dinner, my wife and him and his wife, to celebrate the 5 years. And, it's great to see the ability he has to enjoy himself, his life, his wife, his family, his children, his grandchildren. To see the turnaround from where he was 5-6 years ago to where he is today is just simply amazing.
I mean, you were 27?
Yeah, I would say 27.
Yeah, so you were in your 20s, and how do you decide to give your kidney?
That's a very good question. It's a question I get quite often, actually. And a lot of people would say that I should keep it in case my other kidney goes bad. I should have the second one as backup. Well, the science behind it is if one goes bad, the other one's not far behind because they're so connected as a system. So if I'm healthy enough to donate, well, they say that living donors, the odds of them getting kidney disease is lower than a non-donor, mainly because that they are so healthy. As long as they maintain their healthy lifestyle, get their annual physicals, get their blood work, maintain, do their exercise, eat right, the odds of them getting kidney disease are slim to none.
But Jason, let's talk about this for a second. Like, let's talk a little bit more because, one, you not only decided to give your kidney, right? You didn't necessarily know you would be a match.
Right. So there was a group of 7 people who volunteered to get tested to donate their kidney. I believe I was number 5. I was the 5th person to actually get tested, and I was the first person to be declared as a match. So a lot of people will say that I'm a hero. I've done amazing things, but I would also argue that the 7 or 6 other people that volunteered to get tested, they're also heroes. They are also willing to give up a part of their body to save someone's life.
Sure, absolutely.
And can't take all of the credit. Credit goes to those people as well.
Oh yeah, I'll listen. I give credit to the other 6. Absolutely. I gotta say, weren't you 7?
No, I was the 5th to get tested.
Okay. Yeah.
But there was 2 other people that were willing to get tested.
It's phenomenal to even consider it, right? Because you could, like you, be a yes. And so what are the odds? Do you know what the odds are of you being a match?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you, off the top of my head, because we're not really, we are the same blood type, so that helps, that increases the likelihood. But the odds aren't crazy. I've seen family members who don't match to their family members. In fact, some of the first people to get tested were his family members, and they weren't. So I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but to go into the other reasons why I donated, I grew up in a family of public service. My grandfather did 67 years in the volunteer fire department before he passed away a couple years ago. My dad did 25 years. When I was a young teenager, I did a few years, and we always were there for the community, and that's how I was brought up, to help other people in times of need. Sure. So I see my recipient, Bill Rohde, who has been out in the community, helping with the local thrift shop and helping out with holiday gift baskets and various other things, and growing up with his stepkids and his daughter. So it felt like that, even though he wasn't a blood relative, I felt like it was something that I feel like he would have done for me if the roles were reversed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So how long were you out after you donate?
So I was out of work for 4 weeks.
Okay.
And one of the reasons why I was so willing to donate on the topic of being out of work is working for the government. I have a decent amount of paid time off, and I had enough sick time at the time to put me out for a couple months. So being able to volunteer, if somebody else was able to donate, but they couldn't afford to take off of work for 4 weeks, right, I figured, why can't I step in and take 4 weeks off of work and not suffer such a huge financial loss?
Did you ever hesitate?
Yes. There was the morning of the surgery, I hesitated. They had to put the IV in my arm, and the person who did the IV did not do it properly. And I passed out, and it was a big thing. And there was no risk of the doctor ever saying to stop it. But at the time, I was like, if the doctors can't, or if the whoever, the anesthesiologist, sure, or the nurses, if they can't get this right, how are they going to get that right?
Yeah.
But it worked out. It was, I came back to it. We fixed everything, and we went right into it. I was telling jokes right up until the time I went under.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. So now that you've donated, right, you can't give up your other kidney. You need that.
Right.
But, you're still helping out with this. You're still encouraging others to be living donors. Can you talk a little bit about why it's such an important cause?
So when I donated my kidney at age 27, I thought to myself, I can't just stop doing things, right? So it's like winning the Super Bowl in your rookie season in the NFL and then retiring. Like, you have so much more to give. Like, I have so much more to give than just my body part.
Right.
I wanted to do something. I wanted to advocate for my fellow potential organ donors and kidney patients. One of the other factors in me wanting to donate was dialysis, which is a valuable tool in treating, and helping people live through kidney disease. But you'd have to go for multiple days a week for hours at a time until you get a new kidney. And that's not a way that anyone should live their life. So I decided that I would want to take my education. I went to school for political science, and I interned with the legislature in New Jersey. And I figured I want to be able to figure out a way to use my education and my experience to change public policy to allow for more organ donations. So I was perusing the National Kidney Foundation's website one day and noticed they have a kidney advocacy committee, which I applied for and was accepted to. And the main goal of the advocacy committee for the National Kidney Foundation is to lobby legislators at all levels, but mainly the federal level, to write, sponsor, and pass bills to assist with detecting kidney disease at an earlier stage, protecting living donors when it comes to health insurance and life insurance, so they're not discriminated against, to different pilot programs with Medicare and getting Medicare to cover immunosuppressant drugs, anti-rejection drugs, for more than 36 months. So there's a lot that goes on within the kidney community that needs attention, and that's something that I can definitely help with.
I have to admit, I never thought of any of that.
The hard part about kidney disease is that it's not a very popular disease, for lack of better words.
Okay.
Like, you see all these, cancer is obviously a huge deal. Not to take anything away from cancer, it's a serious thing. That
both can be serious things. Absolutely.
You're right. So it's hard to bring focus to kidney disease, despite the fact that 10% of the country probably suffers from it, most of which don't even know it. So it's hard to bring attention to it or get people to focus on it when there's seemingly other issues out there that may or may not, be more. I'm not going to say it's more important, but it's hard to get people to focus when they're distracted by the latest headline or the latest Twitter trend or the big diseases. And I don't wish any of these negative things on anybody, but there definitely needs to be more of a voice for people with kidney disease. It's
interesting you say that, because not people who talk about something. There could be a topic that's important and right now at the forefront of the entertainment, TV, news channel cycle. And then if you mention something that's just as equivocally important, at the same time, people can panic because they're like, how dare you forget about this topic? That's what we're talking about. Why are you bringing up other things that are irrelevant? And I think people forget, we're humans, we're complicated creatures, but we can also care about more than one thing at a time.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what I try to do, and again, like you said, you can focus on more than one thing at a time.
Yeah.
What I like to do is I've learned to stay in my own lane, per se. Whereas I have an opinion about a lot of things, I feel like my legitimacy and my reputation gets more respected when I focus on one thing. I see a lot of people, especially on social media, one week they're raising money for cancer, and one week they're raising money for multiple sclerosis, and one week they're raising money for literacy and education, which are all fine and perfect causes.
Sure.
Worthy of attention. But I feel as though that my reputation increases in a more positive way when I can just focus. And it also allows me to avoid distractions. I was watching the news the other night, and between serious stories, there's a news story about how a gold egg on Instagram broke the record for most likes on Instagram. Like, all right.
I had heard of it. I haven't looked at it. I'm not one of those likes, but yeah.
I just went right. Like, I just ignored. Like, as soon as I saw an egg was getting millions and millions of likes on Instagram, I had to start paying attention. And I keep thinking to myself, that's 20 seconds that we could have gotten to help out kidney disease.
Sure.
And organ donors.
Yeah. But, there's something to be said about being focused, on a cause and being known for that. I mean, one of the reasons we connected is because of your story, your selflessness, and just your dedication to supporting this cause. And I think it's very important. And, I'm curious because once I heard your story, part of me, I had so many questions. Things like, when you donate, aren't you afraid that you're limited in what you can do now? Don't you think it would hold you back from fully being able to chase your dreams and things like that? I mean, is that a concern for you?
Well, there's immediately during the recovery, I couldn't lift heavy objects, out of fear of hernia. It's a standard thing for all surgeries. But they wanted, the doctors really recommended that I stay away from physical activities that could impact the kidney I have left, such as, no mixed martial arts where somebody could kick me in the kidney,
right?
No football where I
just
could tackled into the kidney.
Yeah.
Soccer is
rugby, all of that.
But there's still a risk. So there's, but at the same time, we haven't seen each other in person for a while, but if you've seen me, my physique does not allow for all of those physical activities that the doctors have had asked me not to do anymore. So there's no worry of that. There was no future of an NFL career for me.
Okay.
For the surgery. So not being able to play football after the surgery
wasn't a loss. Okay.
So, but yeah, I don't feel like I lost anything. I'm a perfectly normal human being. I can still consume alcohol. I still eat the same foods that I had. There's not a single thing that's different about me.
Well, so it's interesting you say that because I think the misconception, and I'm going to call it that because I think I misunderstood as well, is that if you donate, then you're going to be living a half life. You've just sacrificed half of your life to this other person by giving an organ. And now you can't live a full life. That's it. And I think that's a misconception I had, and I'm sure others had it as well. But I guess from what you're saying, that's not true.
Right. Living organ donation wouldn't be a thing if people couldn't live a full life with only one kidney. So you have to think that so as I said before, the kidneys are connected, right? So if I have one kidney or if I've got two, kidney disease is going to affect me all the same at some point or another within a short amount of time.
Just delayed, maybe.
But now that, but let's take living organ donors out of the equation, right?
Sure.
So my recipient, before he got my kidney, had two bad kidneys.
Okay.
So let's just say he gets a cadaver, by the misfortune that somebody passes away and he gets their kidney. Now he's living with one kidney, and he's going to live a perfect life. Obviously, he's going to have to take medication for the rest of his life, but he's able to then...
He can still do stuff.
Right. He can still live the life that he was living. So transfer that thought process over to living donors. I'm living a great normal life with two. Now I'm only down to I've got the same amount of kidneys my recipient has, and we're both living our lives the best that we can.
So you may not be able to speak to this, but I thought I'd ask, as you're a living donor, kidney is a common donation for living donors. What other organs or things can be donated by a living donor? So
lungs, or parts of the lung, I should say, is a popular one. Bone marrow is a huge one. That's I wouldn't say that's an easy one, but that's a very common one.
Okay.
And I have a lot of appreciation for bone marrow donors because my father-in-law, after he retired a couple of years ago, came down with a form of cancer that required a bone marrow transplant. Wow. And he has since gotten that transplant and made a recovery that's been somewhat miraculous. He's still dealing with some minor medical issues, dealing with the science behind it that I'm not all familiar with. But overall, like the worst is behind him because he was able to receive a stem cell transplant.
That's amazing. I mean, I really feel like I'm learning a lot about being a living donor that I didn't know before or that I misunderstood before. What would you say is something, aside from what we've talked about, that is commonly misunderstood by people about living donors that we can correct right now?
Well, I mean, the number one question that I got when I decided to donate my kidney was about my ability to consume alcohol. Everyone.
Fair.
I mean, it's funny, but people ask, are you ready to give up drinking for the rest of your life? I'm like, that's not a thing, not at all. Huh. Now, if I had an issue with my liver, or if I donated my liver, then I would have a much bigger problem with consuming alcohol. Sure. Obviously, when it comes to drinking alcohol, you want to do it in moderation, and you don't want to be driving, and you want to make sure you're living a healthy lifestyle. Sure, you don't want to, consume alcohol and binge drink all the time, because ultimately that will affect your kidneys when it comes to blood pressure and dehydration, things like that. But as far as, as long as I'm drinking in moderation,
right.
I'm good.
So what you're saying is when you're a living donor, while you are a superhero, you're not super proof from alcohol poisoning, and therefore be careful.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Even if you have 2 kidneys, even if you're 100% healthy,
right,
still drinking in moderation and don't drink and drive. And
These are valid points you make. These are valid points you make. So what would you like to see change? I'm curious, in the next 5 years on the landscape of kidney donation. So
part of my duties as with the advocacy committee with the National Kidney Foundation is we go to Washington, D.C. to physically get face to face with federal legislators or their staff members.
Sure.
So I think this year is going to be their 5th year that they've done it. And we team up with the American Association of Kidney Patients and 2 or 3 other kidney organizations from around the country. And we go to this Kidney Patient Summit. And so there's a lot of legislative issues that I've touched on briefly a little bit ago, but we really need to just increase organ donation and living organ donation, because that's ultimately the best way to save people's lives with kidney disease. But there's a couple things on the state level that I'm interested in. Legislation that was introduced by Reed Gussior, and a former assemblyman, now he's the mayor of Trenton, would have made New Jersey an opt-out state. So currently, for you to become a deceased organ donor or an organ donor when you die, is you have to opt in. You physically have to sign up and register as an organ donor. What he wanted to do when he was a member of the legislature is he wanted to make New Jersey an opt-out state. So if you had a problem with giving your organs up when you passed away, then you would have to physically go somewhere and say, I don't want to give my organs.
Right.
So that wouldn't affect living donation so much, other than reducing the need for it, but it would certainly lower the shorten the waiting lists, and ultimately save more people's lives.
Interesting. Okay, so I have 2 more questions for you.
Yes.
One, I think I know the answer to. Would you change anything now that you've given, what happens afterwards? Would you change your decision to donate?
Not only would I not change my decision to donate, I would probably do it again if I physically could. One of the common themes amongst living donors, altruistic donors, is that they would do it again if they absolutely could. And my friend Satira, she's a volunteer with the Gift of Life Donor Program. We're going to an event in a couple weeks to register organ donors, and we're going to be spreading the news. And it's just important.
Yeah. I'm so proud of what you've done and the awareness you're bringing to it. And as someone who is kind of living their dream regardless of that, right? What is one thing you would recommend someone do today as they chase their dreams?
Just don't give up. You're going to face roadblocks. Your dream today may not be what your dream is tomorrow. It could be the same dream. It could be a similar dream. It could be a completely different dream. But you'll always have to take time to self-reflect and to see what you can handle and where you want to go, because there's really the only thing that travels along the path of least resistance is water. there really is, to everything else in life. There seems to always be barriers and roadblocks, and you just have to figure out a way to go around them or just alter your direction. Not everyone's dreams always come true, and not especially how it's planned out.
Yeah, it's a valid point. Jason, thank you so much for coming on the show, talking about chasing your dreams, talking about your amazing story and selflessness. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me. It was a great time.
And guys, that was Jason Nothdurft. He has done an amazing thing, continues to do amazing things by working so hard for the cause of organ donation and living organ donors today. And, look into it. Definitely look into it. And if it's something that you believe in or you want to learn more information, you guys can find more information about Jason and that over on the show notes page at amyj21.com/episode 177. That's episode 177. Till next time, Dream Chasers, keep chasing.
Thank you so much for listening to Chasing Dreams. Amy would love to connect with you and hear all about your pursuit of chasing your dreams. Connect with her on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram via @ChasingDreamsHQ. Or you can find Amy on Twitter @AmyJ21. That's AIMEEJ21. Be sure to visit headquarters over at ChasingDreamsHQ.com for more inspiration, motivation, and resources to help with your own dream chase. We hope you'll join Amy next week, and until then, keep chasing.